Hello and welcome to our next video tutorial where we are going to look at using relative references whilst recording a macro. So throughout this course we're going to look at different ways that you can reference cells. Obviously very difficult to use Excel without that ability. For now we're going to look at when recording how we can provide this functionality of relative references. Now, first of all, we need an example of what we're going to do, and this is it. I have two sheets on this workbook. The second one is called July. So in reality, this would be whatever the month is. For now, it's July. Next month it will be a different month. Whatever that current month is, what we want to do is we want to grab all of this data, everything that got recorded, all of these orders as they are for that month, and we want to move that information to the bottom of this sort of like master sheet. So we want to find the bottom and store it in there. We want to remove any formulas that are in play. There's not many, but there's some in here, column J. We want to remove them. We don't need them anymore. We've got the answer. We're sort of kind of archiving it to this master sheet. This sort of transactional, this kind of consolidation macro. Very common business need, this kind of situation. Okay, so without beating around the bush, we're going to get straight in and we're going to record this and move it over there. Bit of explanation as we go, very brief explanation, so we can try and concentrate as much as we can do on the coding side of things. So we're going to start a recording, view tab, bottom half of macros, record macro, and we're going to give this macro a name, which I'm going to call consolidate orders. Let's put a capital for that, give it a little capital. And I'm going to store it in this workbook, no shortcut key, no description. I'll click OK, so it begins to record what we're doing. And what we're going to do is on this July sheet, I'm going to click in cell A2 to select the very first cell of the sheet, excluding the headings. I want to keep the headings ready for the next month. Now I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut combination. I'm going to hold down Control and Shift and use the down arrow on the keyboard to select everything to the bottom of that column, and follow it with Control, Shift and the right facing arrow to select everything to the end of that row. So there's a nice quick way that I can select that list. A nice relative way of selecting as well, that large list, no matter how big or how small it may have been. Now I'm going to take a copy of that data, any way you want to copy. I'm going to go to the Home tab for it. Then I'm going to move to the Consolidate Macro sheet, that kind of master sheet here. And I'm going to scroll to the top of it and click in cell A2, which is the first kind of cell, the first record of this sheet. This time I'm going to do the Control down arrow, no Shift key, just Control down arrow, because that will move me to the last record within this list. So I'm trying to find the bottom of the list here. So I've clicked on the top record, used the Control down arrow shortcut to get to the bottom. Now what I need to do is move one more cell down, because I need to be in this new row, the next empty row. And at the moment I'm not quite there. So let's be clear, the next cell down is A2157. Now that is not the cell I want. I'm not interested in A2157. Yes, that is the name of this cell, that is the reference, but next time we run that is not the reference. So I don't want to be that specific about the cell. I want to record the nature of going to the next cell down, a relative way of referencing that cell. So I'm going to go to my View tab on the ribbon, the drop down arrow below Macros, and I'm going to choose the option to use relative references. I'm going to turn relative references on. So now, when I move to the next cell down, A2157, however you move into that cell, it should record the action of moving one more cell down, as opposed to the action of going to cell A2157. Once that's done, back to the drop down arrow, and I'm going to toggle that option off. So we return back to absolute cell references. Next task is to paste that information in. I'm going to go to the Home tab, drop down arrow for paste, and I'm going for the values and number formatting option. This 1, 2, 3 and a percentage sign. I'm going to paste all of that in there. Once that's all pasted in, I can see that it keeps the area selected. Just about, it's right at the bottom of the screen there. You can see the area selected. What I'm going to do is scroll to the top and click on cell A2. So I'm just doing that to kind of deselect the area, take the user back to the top of the sheet, working with the assumption that that's probably where they'd like to be taken to when they first move to this sheet. You may disagree. But then I'm going to go to the July sheet, where that data is still selected from our copy. I'm going to go for the... Do I clear that? I don't want to see it. I'll clear it. I'm going to go to the Clear button, and I'm going to clear all. I'm going to wipe them cells clean, ready for the next kind of fresh bit of data. And I'm going to click on cell A2 there as well to deselect what was highlighted there. And then I'm going to stop this macro, because that seems to be everything we want to do. So I'm going for this blue square at the bottom of our screen, and I'm going to stop the recording. So we have ourselves a macro that grabs all the data stored that month, moves it to the bottom of the list on the Consolidate Macro sheet, pasting values and number formatting only, and then clears it from the month sheet, ready for the next month's orders to be entered. This has been used to use relative references within this list, the action that we had to move one cell down once we got to the bottom of this list. Two more steps really on this video I think to do. Next step will be to create a button on our ribbon that will run, on our toolbar I'm going to go for, that will run this macro. It's a bit of a refresher here from an earlier video. Going for the drop down arrow, more commands, macros from our drop down list at the top there, find consolidate orders and add it across, and then we can look at changing the name or image for this modify button at the bottom. So I could choose that person and say to consolidate orders without the underscore there, and I've got a button that runs it. And the next step really is that we can't finish this macro without having a look at the code. That's what this course is about. So I'm going for View, top half of macros, and Edit, and this is what we have. So the very first thing was to select cell A2, select all the data, copy it, move to the other sheet. Then I've got all of this scroll row stuff. What is all that about? Now that stuff is me scrolling up with the scroll bar, just like I am now when I was on that sheet. It's completely harmless stuff, but it is ugly and, you know, adds confusion to this code and slows it down, and there's no reason to want to keep it, even though it's relatively harmless. So I'm going to select all of them active window scroll row lines that I can see there, and I'm just going to use delete on the keyboard to take them out. Then I'm going to do the same to this other bunch that I can see appear here. Just get rid of all of them and take them out. Fantastic. Going to take them lines out as well, so immediately our code's a little bit smaller. This line here is the relative reference, using an object called offset. Not the last time we're going to see that in this course. We'll be covering offset, really useful, one of the easier and therefore more popular ways of using relative references within a macro. We've got our pay special here, followed by us deselecting data and clearing and clicking an A2 and them other things that we did. Now before we leave this macro, I'm going to make a couple more changes to our code, and the next step is going to be this one here. When we clicked on that July sheet, it recorded the code of sheets July.select. Now the next month is not going to be July, so that sheet's probably going to get renamed, and this code will not update itself. Therefore next month it will not work. So what I'm going to do is delete July and the speech marks, and I'm going to type 2. So I've changed the way that I reference the sheet. Instead of saying use the sheet called July, I'm saying use the second sheet of the workbook. So it's also a relative way, again, as opposed to absolute reference by the sheet name, of referencing that sheet. More on that as well as we go through this course, but I'm going to copy that as well back to the top of our code. I also want that line as the very first line. Reason being, when we started recording, we were on the July sheet, so it did not record us selecting the sheet. It just went straight into A2. The button that runs the macro is on the toolbar, so I cannot guarantee where the user is the moment they click the button. They may be on the consolidate macro sheet. So the first thing I'm going to do is move them to that sheet if that's the case, using sheet 2 because I don't know what it's called, and then onwards we go. I'll keep this one here because I'm working on the assumption that name's not going to change. Now, absolute references here, relative references here, and that is our code. Maybe if you wanted to add one more thing, I might add a message box at the bottom. Bit pointless this, but just as a nice finishing factor, and saying wow, that month's orders have been consolidated. Lovely message at the end there. Let's close that code window down. If I did want to give this a trial run, I'd need some information. So what I'm going to do is just grab a chunk of what we had there, just for demonstration purposes. If you are creating a macro, you're typically going to use a sample file, a backup of your data, rather than the real thing, just to make sure it works so you don't damage anything. So with that in mind, I can play around with existing data. It doesn't have to be accurate, as long as it's the same structure as what you'd normally do when you're kind of testing these macros out. I'm going to copy that in and pretend for the moment that this is new information that I need to archive. So I'm going to pop to my person sitting on the toolbar there, my consolidate orders button, and give it a click, and the job is done. Finishing with that message there and leaving us on this July sheet. This one is called July. Notice it continued to work when we reference it as a second sheet as well. Wow, that month's orders have been consolidated. Nice clean sheets there. Back to consolidate macro. Let's have a look at what we've got. It's going to be difficult to tell the difference to whether it worked or not. But all that data has been moved across in there. You can see the number of 26 there actually, so we can see quite clearly that has been moved to the bottom of that list. And this video was here to look at using relative references in a macro. As a byproduct, we had a look at some other elements of code, but they'll be covered again and again as we power through all of these fancy VBA techniques and just what it could do for you and your work.